Hey guys, my name is Dice Rollin'. Today we're going to be taking a look at another Jamie Lee Curtis classic from the 80s. Written by Daniel Grodnick, T.Y. Drake, and Judith Raskow, Terror Train was directed by Roger Spottiswoode. It was released on October 3rd, 1980. Grodnick's original intent with coming up with the story for this film was summed up as replicating John Carpenter's Halloween, but on a train. This isn't hard to see, especially with the casting of Jamie Lee Curtis as the lead. It was also the first and last slasher movie distributed by 20th Century Fox. Terror Train received a mix of positive and negative reviews upon its debut, but just like almost any slasher film from the 80s, it has gained a cult-like status over time. The premise is one that isn't necessarily unfamiliar. Some college students pull a mean-spirited prank that ends badly. Years later, while celebrating New Year's Eve aboard a train, karmic revenge is sought against each of them. So without further ado, this is my review of Terror Train. The movie starts off with a New Year's Eve bonfire celebration, hosted by the fraternity Sigma Pi. In attendance is Elena, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who a new frat member, Kenny, played by Derek McKinnon, is sent up to lose his beanie with. Unfortunately for Kenny, this is just a prank created by his frat brothers, using an actual corpse from the medical school. What is it with frats and dead bodies? Fast forward 3 years later, and it is once again New Year's Eve. I think, anyway, the costumes and pranks are what make me question the holiday being celebrated. This time, the fraternity is going to be partying on a train. The train doesn't even get completely boarded before we have our first kill, in the form of Ed, played by Howard Busgang. With no one the wiser as to the one less frat member, the train is off with the festivities in full swing. In the private senior car, the incident with Kenny is brought up by a pledge. So Doc, played by Hart Bachner, tells the story with Mo, played by Timothy Weber, and Jackson, played by Anthony Sherwood, to back him up. However, Elena doesn't find it to be such an enthralling tale to share.
Put a kid in the hospital.
Every once in a while we get snippets of conversations between Carney, the conductor, played by the late Ben Johnson, Charlie, played by Steve Michaels, and Shovels, played by Donald Lamoureux. Generally, they seem to be talking about how relevant trains are going to be, as far as necessary travel. Back with the fraternity and sorority members after a failed attempt to dispatch Mitchie, played by the late Sandy Curry, the killer instead takes the opportunity to off Jackson. At the same time, Elena discovers, unlike she was told, that this party on a train was not Mo's idea, but Doc's, given how the last party of his that she attended turned out. She's none too happy about this information, but maybe the fact that David Copperfield is on the train will distract her. Just so you know, he's labeled as the Magician. Thanks, I never would have guessed. So essentially, the passengers and the audience get a magic show every now and then, just because. If David Copperfield ended up being the killer, or getting killed while everyone else thought it was another magic trick, I swear to God. You ever see a very young David Copperfield perform card tricks on a train where murders have taken place? Well, you're gonna. You know, the real trick is however she's able to stay upright with her eyes closed on a moving train. While Elena and Mitchie are dancing, their boyfriends decide to level up their douchery by taking Pet, played by Joy Boyschel, and Mary, played by the late Vanity, back to the private car. Carney is enlisted to investigate the bathroom stall that seems to have been locked all night, and he finds out why. To add to Carney's problems, there's no way for them to contact authorities because there's no radio on board, so they just have to keep the train moving forward to the next stop. However, when Carney and Charlie take a look into the bathroom again, they find that there's no blood, and whoever's in the lizard suit is moving. Either the killer is really bad at killing, or this is the killer. So a loaded Mitchie takes the equally loaded appearing Jackson away to her sleeper. That's right, no one will know. Except for the important detail of that was a black man you murdered, and you are very not black. A little later, Carney finds Mitchie dead. Since Elena almost stumbled across her dead friend too, Carney escorts her away. Probably a good idea anyway, given that she was on her way to the private car, where Doc was attempting to set it up so she would find Mo with Pet. Credit where credit is due, Mo has been doing his best to keep his and Pet's pants on. Mostly. Carney tells Elena that Mitchie's dead, and since she doesn't believe him, she goes to find out for herself. This time, the body and blood is still where Carney found it, Meanwhile, as David Copperfield performs some more, Doc finds that Mo, who has been seated beside him the whole time, is dead. You know, for a bunch of medical students, they're really not good at preventing death. With people slowly but surely dying around him, including the engineer, Carney stops the train. So screw the unprepared passengers, I guess. Everyone is escorted off the train because it's debatably safer out in the middle of nowhere, in the cold, than aboard the train. The rest of the employees search the train for the killer, while Carney does a head count. It doesn't take Elena long at all to figure out who's behind all this, and I'm glad it doesn't, because unless Doc pulled some other deeply traumatic prank on someone else, Kenny's about the only suspect. According to Elena, she had gone to visit Kenny shortly after the initial incident, and she wasn't allowed to see him. But she did learn that he possibly killed someone at some point in his past, and that gave him mental illness, which was only compounded by the prank. Doc's solution to prevent their impending death is to go back on the train, and lock them both in the private car. Not wanting to just abandon their friends when she knows who the killer is, Elena leaves the car. Just as well, that leaves Doc readily available to the killer. Since Doc pointed out that Kenny had been into magic, it's assumed that Copperfield is Kenny in disguise. So he's locked into one of the cars while another is used to keep everyone together and safe. Except for Elena, who's taken to an unused car, so she can be isolated and get some sleep. Yeah, right. Listen, man, she's already survived Michael Myers. I don't think you've got much of a chance here. See, this is why I don't wear hoops. Elena, though bloodied and beaten, manages to fend off the killer rather well. Naturally, of course, the killer isn't done yet. While rummaging through some of Copperfield's belongings, she finds, well, Copperfield. I guess that rules him out as the killer, huh? She runs to alert Carney, but finds someone else instead. Given her current captive position, Elena grants Kenny his wish and kisses him, which seems to cause an extreme form of PTSD breakdown. This is taken advantage of by Carney. If nothing else, I think Carney and Elena have been through a lot tonight. And with that, the credits roll as the train nearly reaches its destination. Terror Train is a pretty decent slasher. You have the intriguing element of it being set almost entirely on a moving train, as well as the mystery element that naturally goes along with a masked killer on the loose. It felt a bit slow during most parts leading up to the climax, though. Ironic for something that's happening on a moving vehicle. It also seems like more attention was given to the characters that are not meant to be the main focus than the actual main characters. There's quite a few scenes that feel like they don't belong here. There were a couple of twists I liked in the story, like after Jackson's body is discovered, and they come back to find that he's seemingly alive and alright. You don't really see killers trying to cover up their tracks like that in most slasher movies. The ending twist of Kenny having been hiding in plain sight the whole time. I do like how the killer is a chameleon in the way that he wears the costumes of some of the people he's killed. I wish they had gone farther with this, by maybe having the killer do this so frequently and secretly that we, the audience, don't know when someone is just a college student or the killer pretending to be a student. I appreciate the elements that were used to at least try to follow the slasher formula. They do pay off for the most part, but I don't feel like it does much more than follow in the footsteps of a majority of other like movies of the time. But maybe it wasn't supposed to break any new ground. Obviously, most of us are here for Jamie Lee Curtis. If you're not, cool. Once again, she did very well in the role of a leading scream queen. She was sympathetic and a good-natured character that you wanted to see survive. It's not too hard to pull off when a majority of the other characters are dickheads. I don't find Elena to be all that memorable when compared to Curtis's other horror roles, but she's nothing to frown at. I wouldn't classify anything here as top-notch acting. It was solid throughout, and I can't really complain too much about anybody. A couple of weaker performances sprinkled here and there, but all in all, it was alright. Another couple of actors that I want to talk about is Derek McKinnon and David Copperfield. I feel like it goes without saying that if you're going to be a successful magician, then you also have to be pretty good at acting, and Copperfield was. He fit in with all the other characters, and though it was pretty obvious that he was the magician, when it came to just playing a role, it worked. Now, McKinnon had to play 3 different parts. The first of the innocent and victimized pledge, then the vengeful and silent killer, and even a seemingly female magician's assistant. These were all well portrayed. Once again, the train used as the primary setting is a fun part of the movie. Each car was unique in how it looked, so it wasn't hard for me to tell where the characters were during the scenes. It frames things in a bit of a different light. Though it's relatively simple, it worked well. It's the whole idea of enhancing the tension by letting you know these characters are trapped with the killer, and there's nowhere they can go. It adds a claustrophobic nature to it as well. The atmosphere lends itself to the holiday that's taking place, and does come across as being threatening in a way, since it's a seemingly frigid winter at night we're dealing with. Similar to a Christmas-centered horror movie. With the decorations and celebration, it feels like a New Year's Eve movie, for the most part. And with the combination of the setting and the atmosphere, it separates itself just enough to stand out just a little. The special effects are practical and simple. I wasn't impressed with anything, but I didn't feel too let down by it either. However, Doc's decapitated head is laugh-worthy, since it looked nothing like him. But for what it is, not bad. Something else that's been mentioned by a lot of other people is that the kills are a bit of a letdown. One of the things that we look forward to when we watch a slasher film is getting to see creative kills, right? Here, practically all of the kills are done off-screen, which leaves us to see only the aftermath. John Mills Cockle composed the score, and it fits right in with the events unfolding. I thought I detected a little bit of a Friday the 13th sting here and there. Each piece creates a good atmosphere and enhances the tone just a bit. It's a bit more subdued in places than some other slasher films. There were a couple of moments that I thought created a suitably tense atmosphere. However, I can't say that there was anything that really screamed New Year's celebration here. The band Crime wasn't bad either. I won't be remembering a bit of their songs, but that's okay. With all that being said, I'm giving Terror Train 5 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. I think the primary reason why this film has stuck around for so long is Jamie Lee Curtis. And that's valid, but that can only go so far. It's not a bad movie, it's not even a bad slasher movie. It's just not a great one either. I'm sure this was a cash-in on the craze that Halloween launched, and certainly wasn't the only one. It was made with competence. It just doesn't stand out that much for me, and it wouldn't be my first choice for when I want to watch a slasher movie. With that being said, if you're someone who really enjoys the general premise that slasher movies promise, then Terror Train doesn't disappoint. And there's the bonus of this all taking place in one location. I know there are people out there who like stories like that. I would recommend Terror Train to Jamie Lee Curtis fans, 80s slasher enthusiasts, any of you who would like to check out a lesser known slasher, and anyone who would want to watch a cheesy horror film with friends on New Year's Eve. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like to let me know. Don't forget to leave a comment down below telling me what you think of this movie, and if you have any suggestions for horror movies you would like to see me review in the future. You can support the channel through my Patreon, where you would get exclusive and early access to videos like this. Also, don't forget to share this video to help the channel grow, and subscribe for more videos like this. See you later.
He didn't